Christmas, everyone. Wanted to share a special story with you today called A Christmas from Heaven. It's the true story of the Berlin candy bomber. His name was Lieutenant Gail Halverson. It's a great story to share with your family. We sell it in our museum, and I hope you'll indulge me and listen to the whole entire story, because from little things come big things. On Christmas Eve, 1948, somewhere between Wiesbaden and Berlin, a 27-year-old American pilot gazed into the night sky. The heavens were so full of stars, it seemed they would overflow and tumble to earth in a brilliant display of Christmas generosity and joy. Hal, as he was known to his crew, wrapped his hands around the yoke of the C-54 cargo plane packed with 20,000 pounds of flour. This is the real spirit of Christmas, he thought to himself, as he guided his plane toward Tempelhof Air Base in West Berlin. When World War II had ended 3 years earlier, Germany and its capital were divided between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union. Then, in a grab for power, Stalin blocked ground transportation into the city. To preserve freedom and keep 2.5 million West Berliners from starving, the United States and Britain began transporting food and other basic supplies by air. Hal was one of hundreds of Americans who participated in the historic Berlin Airlift, dubbed Operation Vittles. That snowy Christmas Eve, as Hal radioed for clearance to land, his mind wandered back 6 months to the day that had changed his life. He had been standing at the end of Tempelhof runway, taking home movies of arriving planes, when he noticed about 30 children on a grassy strip, just beyond a barbed wire fence. In broken English, they asked about the planes, how much flour each one carried, and whether the airlift would continue. Although the children had been on meager rations, they were more concerned with freedom than with flour. They wanted what Hal had always had, the opportunity to pursue their dreams. For nearly an hour, Hal answered questions before saying goodbye. As he turned away, one question lingered in his mind. What makes these children different? All over the world, children were known to beg for candy from American servicemen. These children had little to eat and no candy at all, yet they were grateful for what the airlift had given them and asked for nothing. Their gratitude melted Hal's heart. Instinctively, he wanted to give something back. Digging into his pocket, he found only 2 sticks of gum. From little things come big things, his father used to say. A broad smile crossed his boyish face. Giving so little to so many could cause a squabble, he reasoned, but a quiet voice within him urged him on. Hal broke the gum into 4 pieces and passed it through the fence. Without a word, the 4 children tore the gum wrappers into strips and passed them to the others. One by one, each small nose was pressed to the paper, breathing in the minty smell. Never had he seen such expression of joy and wonder, even at Christmas. As Hal watched in amazement, his mind raced. If only I could give more, he thought. He had his own rations of gum and chocolate. Maybe his buddies would be willing to donate theirs. Just then, another C-54 roared over his head, and an idea formed in his mind. I could drop candy from the air, he said to himself. He quickly explained his plan to the children. When they asked how to recognize his plane, he remembered flying over the family farm back home. I'll wiggle my wings, he announced, spreading his long arms and waving them up and down. The children giggled with delight. Just promise me you'll share the candy, he said. All heads nodded in agreement. By the next day, Hal had secretly enlisted his crew to donate their rations and make parachutes from handkerchiefs. As Hal's plane approached the runway and the grass came into view, he wiggled his wings, and a knot of waiting children exploded, running and jumping in the air. With the precision of bombardiers, the airmen pushed the candy out the flare chute, and white canopies floated to the earth. 30 children ran with open arms to catch the treasures. Hal and his buddies were as excited as the children. The thrill of giving was irresistible. Soon they were dropping parachutes every day, hundreds of them. The press caught on and reports went out. Mail for Uncle Wiggly Wings began piling up at the base operations. Hal found himself standing before his superiors, expecting to be court-martialed. But the colonel surprised him. "Halverson," he said, "General Tunner thinks it's a good idea." Soon hundreds of airmen were donating rations. Operation Little Vittles quickly captured the imagination of people everywhere. Candy and handkerchiefs poured in from around the world. Hal became known as the Candy Bomber and the Chocolate Pilot. Across Berlin, children gathered to catch the parachutes and share the candy with each other. As they sent hundreds of thank you letters, like the one addressed to Dear Uncle of Heaven, some included maps and instructions. "Fly along the big canal on the second bridge, turn right 1 block. I live in the bombed out house on the corner. I'll be in the backyard every day at 2 p.m. Drop chocolate there." Day by day, the parachutes brought peace and candy and renewed hope. The children made friends with their former enemies, and their parents' hearts were softened. The wounds of war began to heal. By December, the Little Vittles operation had gathered 18 tons of candy from Americans and candy makers, and 3 more tons came in from private donors. The spirit of Christmas was descending on people everywhere, lifting them and lifting up in the joy of giving. That Christmas, the 27-year-old American pilot blinked back tears. The stars overhead could not be more beautiful than in the skies, overflowing with parachutes, tumbling to earth in a brilliant display of Christmas generosity. His father was right. From little things come big things. Hal in his cockpit pulled back on the yoke as his wheels rolled onto the familiar runway. This is the real spirit of Christmas, to give whatever we have, no matter how small the gift. In that moment, Halverson prayed for the courage to never give anything less. The Candy Bomber, Colonel Gail S. Halvorsen, was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and grew up on small farms in Utah and Idaho. He earned a private pilot's license under the non-college civilian pilot training program in September of 1941, and then joined the Civil Air Patrol as a pilot. He joined the United States Army Air Corps in June of 1942 and trained as a fighter pilot with the Royal Air Force. He then returned to the Army Air Corps and was assigned flight duty in foreign transport operations in the South Atlantic Theater. Following World War II, Russia laid siege to Berlin, cutting off the flow of food supplies in the city. The blockade began in June of 1948 and continued into May 1949. Gail Halverson was one of hundreds of U.S. pilots used in a massive airlift to provide sustenance to the people of Germany. He became known as Uncle Wiggly Wings, the Chocolate Flyer, and the Berlin Candy Bomber. Again, from little things come big things. Merry Christmas from all of us at the Southern Heritage Air Foundation.